Chapter 521, Frightening Precision. Silence abruptly returned to the street. Sword Demon, who was huddled behind that pile of sacks, was feeling awkward. Being someone considered as an expert of days past, he did not really feel good to have fallen into his current state. He really wanted to poke his head out to see what was happening, yet he did not dare to do so. He was not afraid of death, rather, he did not want his action to create further complications for Gufei. He knew he had become a burden in this battle, and just this thought alone made him feel that he should just delete his account. On the street, Gufei and Broken Water Arrow were motionlessly staring at each other. What was different between the two were where their eyes were looking at. Broken Water Arrow was staring at Gufei's mouth, for he was wary of that blink spell. He was taking precautions against it, as no matter how softly a mage muttered an incantation, their lips would still move. Meanwhile, Gufei was watching Broken Water Arrow's hands. He was thankful that they were in a game, and there would be an obvious visual effect whenever players unleashed the different attacks and skills. Take the bolts fired from the crossbow as an example. A glinting flash would always appear with every shot, similar to the flash of muzzle fire from a firearm. While it might be a little later than the squeezing of his index finger, at least it was still a visual cue he could take reference from. Against Broken Water Arrow's dirty tricks, like blocking his trigger finger, even Gufei could not concisely make out the difference between the shudder of fingers grasping against an actual trigger pull. Coco, watching afar in stealth, was also anxiously waiting with bated breath for the two to begin their attacks. In the end, she nearly went breathless, yet the two did not even move. Finally, she could not stand anymore and typed out a message. "Just how long are the two of you going to stare at each other?" Gufei sighed inwardly and said aloud, "Look here, you." Gufei saw Broken Water Arrow dash forward just as he said these three words, giving him quite a scare that he dodged in a hurry. The two immediately steadied themselves when they realized that the other had not acted according to their predictions. Gufei grimaced, for he had experienced such a situation before. Back when he was having a duel with traversing 4C scale force, that man had also been staring intently at his lips, and the instant he spoke caused the man to anxiously attempt to evade his blink. Broken Water Arrow had apparently made the same mistake as well, except Gufei had also lost his focus for a moment there and moved in accordance. The two experts realized in that instant what had happened and felt a little embarrassed. Coco, who had been watching this exchange, sent her message, "What's with you two? Stroke?" "Don't worry, I didn't intone my incantation," Gufei said. Broken Water Arrow immediately recognized that he was already at a disadvantage. His opponent merely had to move his lips to fake him out. It was really confounding. Since he is suddenly talking, is he perhaps thinking of mixing his spell incantation with his rambling to make it nigh impossible for me to defend against it effectively? Broken Water Arrow thought about this as he took another 2 steps backward. He had no idea what the maximum effective range of blink was, but he was at least positive that it would not be without limitation. The more he backed away, the safer he would be. While the further distance would slightly lower the chance of him getting the kill, he would still be the one benefiting in the grand scheme of things by maintaining his distance from Gufei. "Looks like you're prepared to have a contest of patience with me." That was what Gufei had wanted to say when he first opened his mouth, but now that he saw Broken Water Arrow backing away, he was all the more certain of his presumption that Broken Water Arrow was thinking of getting a clearer picture of what he would do before the man attacked. Broken Water Arrow remained quiet, focusing his attention straight to Gufei. At the moment, he considered Gufei's words to be a trap. There was no telling when he would utter the phrase translocation, blank. While talking, "You win if we're in a contest of patience," Gufei continued. "I don't have the time as I still have work later." Gufei glanced at the time. Broken Water Arrow continued to be silent. "All right, here I come," Gufei suddenly said. Raising his sword without any spell incantation or strafing, Gufei walked straight toward Broken Water Arrow using the shortest route. Broken Water Arrow did not expect Gufei to be so direct and unrestrained, completely ignoring the crossbow pointed dead center at him. In such a situation, why would Broken Water Arrow even hesitate? Firing a shot was the only option he had left. A cold glint flashed. Snipe was unleashed, and the bolt flew out far faster, more powerful, and even greater than before. Can you dodge this? Broken Water Arrow did not believe that Gufei's reaction time would reach such a level. Sure enough, Gufei was unable to react in time. He dashed right toward Broken Water Arrow just like that crossbow bolt. Broken Water Arrow's snipe struck his glabella, which showed how transcendental his marksmanship was. Unfortunately, a crossbow was not like a real gun, so there was no such thing as getting an insta-kill from a headshot. Gufei swung his arm and wiped that arrow off as if he were wiping off sweat from his forehead. A trickle of blood ran down his forehead, but there was no stopping Gufei from advancing onto Broken Water Arrow. That's too much, man. Broken Water Arrow and the spectating Coco shared the same thought in their minds. This was because from how Gufei acted, it looked as if he had no intention of even evading the bolt and planned to devote his mind and head, literally, to take that shot entirely. Was he not at all afraid of being insta-killed? After all, snipes from many of the powerful sharpshooters were entirely capable of insta-killing mages. There was no doubt Broken Water Arrow could be considered as one himself, so it only made sense to make such a consideration when faced against such opponents. There was no point in thinking all these now. Broken Water Arrow turned around in a hurry to leave, for he had no wish to engage Gufei in a melee battle. He was even less inclined to waste the only 2 bolts he had left in his crossbow. He was hoping to run off to buy time for his snipe's cooldown to end before firing off the next shot. The fact that Gufei had taken the first snipe gave him confidence that Gufei would not have taken the shot straight to the dome like what happened had he been able to evade it. That meant the speed of his snipes was at a level which was impossible for Gufei to dodge. However, Gufei managed to close in with those few steps after eating that shot, well in the range for him to blink over, so there was no reason he would be foolish enough to engage in a chase after an agility-based sharpshooter that had a distinct advantage in the same stat. This was the chance for him to get into melee range that he had used his HP to exchange. Translocation, blink. Broken Water Arrow was still keeping his eyes glued to catch Gufei's lip movement even while he ran. Realizing that he was about to use his blink to engage in close combat, Broken Water Arrow had already thought up of a preventive measure he could take and immediately rolled on the ground. No matter where he blinked, Gufei would have to be somewhere next to Broken Water Arrow. Broken Water Arrow did not believe he had that much bad luck to roll right at where Gufei's feet would appear. He swept his eyes to take in his surroundings even as he rolled. Sure enough, he was not that unlucky, and Gufei was left to the side of his body after completing that roll. Before Broken Water Arrow even got up, he lifted his arm and aimed the reticle of his crossbow right at Gufei. You didn't dodge the first arrow, so would you dare take a second shot at point blank? I'll use that chance when you dodge to increase the distance between us, using that time while your blink is on cooldown to reload my bolt magazine as I run. That was what Broken Water Arrow planned to do, seize the opportunity to counterattack before the enemy could even act accordingly. Simply put, he did not have the confidence to take down Gufei with just the 3 bolts he had left in his crossbow right now. Broken Water Arrow's reaction time was fast, but so was Gufei's. He could tell through Broken Water Arrow's action that he was going to roll away when he cast blink. Gufei executed a reverse leg kick, and it accurately sailed toward Broken Water Arrow's hand. His hand went awry and the bolt he had shot went zooming past Gufei's side, missing him entirely. Broken Water Arrow had quite the shock. He watched Gufei's kick brush past, and this was quickly followed by the sword in Gufei's right hand. There was no doubt that Broken Water Arrow was not just your average player, as he was not in the least bit flustered when faced with a professional kung fu attack. The man shrunk back and avoided the danger. Broken Water Arrow swiftly extended his left hand as a follow-up, actually aiming to grab a hold of Gufei's wrist. This was naturally an attempt to leverage on Gufei's disadvantage when it came to strength. As long as anyone with War Without Wounds strength got a hold of Gufei's limb directly, they would be able to forcefully hold his head down to face down the muzzle. Thus, while this move dealt no damage whatsoever, the fact that it could create potentially severe consequences for Gufei was not lost to him. Gufei had no choice but to evade this, for this was a move that was far more frightening than a move that dealt damage. Gufei retracted his hand in order to dodge this grab from Broken Water Arrow, and the sharpshooter lifted the crossbow in his right hand once more and aimed down the sights. Gufei quickly waved his left hand and again misaligned the aim. Broken Water Arrow had apparently learned his lesson and did not fire off his shot in a hurry, thereby saving that final crossbow bolt left in the magazine. However, the cooldown for Gufei's blink was continuing with every second, and that was obviously to the detriment of Broken Water Arrow. After exchanging a few rounds of punches and kicks, Broken Water Arrow never found the opportunity to line his shot for the crossbow. He was very astonished by the accuracy, reaction time, and deftness that Gufei demonstrated through his skill at unarmed combat. Time to go all out. Now that the situation had escalated to this point, the only option Broken Water Arrow had left was to make a final gambit. In the moment Gufei's sword came slashing toward him, Broken Water Arrow's arm did not shoot out like before to grab a hold of his wrist in an attempt to push back the attack. Instead, the man chose to ignore this slash and held that crossbow tightly with both hands, raising it up against Gufei. "Let's see if your sword or my shot is faster. At worst, we'll just die together." The cooldown for Broken Water Arrow's snipe ended at this time, and he believed that there was no mage out there that could survive taking 2 shots of it. Meanwhile, it was too late for Gufei to stop that shot, for this was what Broken Water Arrow had traded off when he chose to ignore Gufei's attack. He was very clear as to what it meant to be cut by the insta-kill mage. However, the design for an archer's attack was different from that of a mage. As long as the projectile was released, even if the player firing it got killed, the damage from the attack would still remain. Meanwhile, a mage's spell inhibited no physical form, and so the damage of their spells would disappear along with the caster's death. In such a situation, as long as Broken Water Arrow managed to release the crossbow bolt in time, even if he was unable to evade Gufei's attack, both of them would end up killing each other. In fact, if the bolt managed to pierce Gufei before he could complete his attack, the damage from that flaming slash would not be of any danger to Broken Water Arrow. He simply did not consider himself to be at a loss at either outcome. Broken Water Arrow pulled the trigger, but he felt a trace of disquiet overcome him. The bolt did not fire out as he had hoped, the trigger jammed. As such, Broken Water Arrow did not feel the sensation of the triggering mechanism at work. Hey, don't firearms suffer from mechanical failure from time to time? That's why a sword in the hand is still the most reliable weapon to hold onto. Twin Incineration. Incinerate. Gufei saw that Broken Water Arrow was unable to avoid this slash and immediately uttered the incantation for his ultimate move, using up the very last of mana for this attack. Broken Water Arrow was no longer able to avoid this and used that final moment he had to glance at his crossbow. He discovered that a tiny wad of paper was stuck right behind the trigger. Could it have been back then? Broken Water Arrow recalled that second time he dodged Gufei's attempt at closing in on him. The man's left hand slapped his weapon while he was aiming for a shot. He figured that it was probably then that Gufei had stuck this wad of paper to jam his weapon. How truly frightening! Broken Water Arrow muttered to himself. The dexterity of his hands, the confidence that I would be unable to sense him tampering with my weapon. Can he still be considered as human? Chapter 522. Lone Eagle Workshop. Broken Water Arrow no longer had any room to maneuver as he was sent to this point of no return by his own 2 hands. Now that he could not slay his opponent, all that was left was to be slain by the opponent. Perhaps, he's merely been waiting for me to make such a move ever since he jammed my trigger with that tiny wad of paper. This man's not just fearsomely skilled but crafty as well. The thought flashed across Broken Water Arrow's mind as the tip of Gufei's sword swept past him. He did not feel great pain, and more importantly, this slash lacked that intense burning sensation that came with a mage's fire spells. Broken Water Arrow looked carefully. He had no idea where the flames that originally wreathed Gufei's sword when he cast Twin Incineration had gone, but that also meant that this cut he took was nothing more than a sword cleave from a mage, and it was devoid of any spell damage. Meanwhile, Gufei darted over to take cover under the eaves of the house. His back was propped against the wall and his eyes no longer posted on Broken Water Arrow. Instead, he was looking over in a different direction with great vigilance. Someone came to my rescue. Broken Water Arrow understood that someone must have ambushed Gufei at this critical moment. It was simple to prevent a mage's attack, since all they needed was a hit to interrupt the spell incantation. No matter how skilled Gufei really was, There was no way he could escape this rule of the system. The only reason his attack had turned into a basic attack was due to someone out there interrupting his casting. Nevertheless, he saw no one on the street, so it was probably a ranged job class that delivered this attack. Is it an archer from the guild? Broken Water Arrow was guessing the identity of his savior when he heard the extremely sharp whistle of an arrow in flight. Broken Water Arrow involuntarily wrinkled his brows. He hated just how obtrusive the sound of an arrow was designed in this game, as it was clearly an audio warning for the enemy. Still, despite his hate for it, he understood its purpose. Sounds played a large part in games, and they were indications of powerful attacks. Gufei nimbly spun under the eaves as that shot embedded itself into the wall. Linian City's houses were mostly made out of wood, so this shot even directly pierced the wall with almost half of the arrow shaft punching through. What a powerful shot! Broken Water Arrow exclaimed. As a sharpshooter, this was also the first time he had seen an arrow fired off with such ferocity. Just like Gufei, he was able to judge where this shot had come from. Atop the wall near the other end of the street, an archer was half squatting by the eaves of a house, holding an eye-catching pose. Anyone could tell at a glance just how accustomed this person was when it came to such things. After releasing a snipe moments ago, what followed was a double shot. Gufei did a combat roll as the two arrows plunged into the ground. Gufei looked to his left and right, as if considering if he could finish off Broken Water Arrow before dealing with this unknown assailant, but his expression suddenly paled, and he did a backflip behind the sacks piled along the street to take cover from them. Following this, another red coruscating arrow came flying rapidly toward him. Gufei had originally avoided it, but who would have thought that this arrow would suddenly change its direction and drove after Gufei behind that pile. White light flashed. Broken Water Arrow clearly saw this flash of white light appear from behind that pile of sacks. His heart trembled. Quickly pacing over, he no longer saw signs of Gufei. Is he dead? Broken Water Arrow was stunned, yet he was not particularly surprised. That was because, having eaten his own snipe moments ago, Gufei's HP was not at 100%. The Mage's blink skill was probably still on cooldown after using it earlier. More importantly, that arrow that was fired off just now unexpectedly had the tracking effect. Broken Water Arrow was certain that it was not a homing projectile, since the speed of the arrow from that skill was so slow that it could not even match the speed of a Mage's fireball. That shot he had just witnessed bore all the characteristics of a snipe, yet it could also track its target. How would anyone be able to evade that attack? Recalling how that red coruscating arrow looked as it whizzed past, Broken Water Arrow reckoned that it must be some new skill. Turning his head behind him as he thought of this, he saw that there was another archer standing tall in the wind, looking dashing. Going by the figure he saw at this distance, it seemed that this archer was a woman. Following the death of Gufei, Sword Demon quickly retreated from his hiding spot behind a pile of sacks using stealth with every intention of leaving. However, this was when a roar from a warrior who had descended from a nearby rooftop was heard. The tremor from his landing shook everyone's hearts. Raising his arms, the warrior angrily unleashed his cyclone right in the middle of the street as he came tearing toward the stealthed Sword Demon. A thief's movement speed was reduced while in stealth mode, and this warrior had the advantage of knowing Sword Demon's hiding spot before he began his cyclone attack. Even though he did not know the exact position where Sword Demon was, his cyclone had essentially sealed off every possible escape route that thief had. Sword Demon's figure soon appeared out of thin air. He knew making a getaway while in stealth would be far too unrealistic. Sword Demon glanced to his left and right. Getting a running head start, he leapt onto a pile of sacks beside a house and used the momentum to bring his body on top of a roof. The archer on the opposite tent quickly fired off an arrow and struck his shoulder. Sword Demon shuddered, but he gritted his teeth and rolled to get his entire body to safety. He proceeded to activate his fleet foot and was soon sprinting across the rooftops. Damn it! Broken Water Arrow heard that warrior curse as he randomly tossed a sack against a nearby wall. Broken Water Arrow was in a daze. He looked to the left, then to the right, and up that rooftop. There was no doubt that these three players were all experts. The destructive force of that archer on the rooftop diagonally opposite him, the distinctive skill of that female archer behind him, and the warrior that consciously used his cyclone to cut off the escape routes of his ambusher. They were all very remarkable. These players were probably not from Linian City, as most of the experts here were either hunters or the occasional thieves. Rarely would anyone hear about the achievements of other job classes. "Who are you guys?" Broken Water Arrow asked. He lifted his eyes, only to find that the archer atop the roof had already retreated from sight, while the warrior in the middle of the street had also sheathed his 2 claymores and stood there impassively. The female archer from behind him was the only one who had come walking toward him. "Broken Water Arrow," this woman called out his name crisply. "You people know my name?" Broken Water Arrow was surprised. He looked back. It turned out that "you guys" was no longer apt of a description, for that warrior had already turned and set off. This left just this lady to speak to him. "We've had our eye on you for a while now," she said as a form of confirmation. "Who are you guys?" Broken Water Arrow asked suspiciously. "Lone Eagle Workshop," she introduced. "A workshop?" Broken Water Arrow was still skeptical. "We've only recently started, we're still at the stage of talent acquisition, so we don't really have much fame to our name yet." "You said you're looking for me? What are your intentions?" Broken Water Arrow was nationally able to discern that these people had their reasons for approaching him. "Should we continue our discussion here or find somewhere else to discuss this properly after we unmask ourselves?" One of the 2 had their face covered, while the other had face paint on his face. They were both hiding their identities. "That doesn't matter," Broken Water Arrow replied. "I thank you guys for rescuing me, but if you're approaching me to join a workshop, I'm not in the least bit interested." "Is there a need to reject us so quickly?" "Let's find a spot and slowly talk about this," the lady invited. At the end of the day, she had been a huge help moments ago. Anyone would feel rather awkward to reject an invite so directly, and Broken Water Arrow was no exception. The man nodded, and the 2 left the street together. "Where to?" Broken Water Arrow asked. "The choice is yours," the lady answered. "This place will do, then." Broken Water Arrow pointed to a tavern beside him. It was the best place for players to go and have a chat in the game. Ocean was a little astonished. She originally thought that Broken Water Arrow would be unwilling to discuss such matters in a place where other players would gather, yet he specifically chose such a place like a tavern. This kind of start was already outside the realm of her expectation. It seemed that this matter would not proceed as smoothly as she had first presumed it would. Ocean hoped to glean something from the look he had, but ultimately failed because the latter had paint on his face. She even felt a little faint if she stared at it for too long. "This place works." She did not hesitate for long and quickly agreed to enter the establishment together with the man. It was early in the morning, so while there were not exactly many players in the tavern, it was not particularly empty either. She chose seats in a corner for them, and the 2 sat down. "Anything to drink?" The man took the initiative to ask this question. She quickly processed this. Her face was still covered. Asking her about what she wanted to drink, was he trying to hint for her to take off the cloth covering her face? Thus, Ocean bravely took it off without a moment of pause as she answered, "I'm fine with anything." Broken Water Arrow turned his head back and ordered 2 glasses of liquor. It was the sort that the average player would commonly be found drinking. Nevertheless, he did not make any attempts to wipe off the face paint on his face and showed no intention of revealing how he really looked beneath it. This guy. She noticed that he was exceedingly calm, emotionally speaking. He was completely unfazed by her actions or the activities in his surroundings. It was really difficult to get a grasp on what his type was thinking deep down. Adding the fact that his face was hidden behind all that paint, it was hard to even get a good read from any of his subtle expression. Ocean gracefully took a sip of her beverage. Just as she was wondering where to begin, she saw Broken Water Arrow lift his glass up before he started the conversation. "In any case, I ought to thank you still for you and your man's timely help earlier." "No need to be courteous, we didn't do it out of good fault will." Ocean was frank. "A workshop, right?" "I truly don't have any interest in that," Broken Water Arrow said. "Is that so?" She was looking directly into the man's eyes. "Are you really uninterested or are you too satisfied with the current situation?" "Don't worry. We offer great conditions when it comes to the treatment of our employees." "Treatment? That's not what I mean," Broken Water Arrow repudiated. "Oh, what other requests do you have, then?" "I will try my best to accommodate them," she announced. "A workshop means becoming a professional gamer, right?" "I simply have no interest in such a line of work," so I have no intention of joining one. The man was upfront. Is that so? But from what I understand, the work you're currently doing is rather exemplary. Zizayoshin said. What do you mean by that? He asked. I'm referring to the work you're doing in Deep Freeze. Zizayoshin was all smiles. From beneath the table, she secretly unfurled the memory black box scroll to activate it. In order not to screw up, everyone specifically asked Brother Assist to research about how this thing worked. There was only a single key point a user must take note when using memory black box. When it was cast as a spell, the caster ought to sustain it continuously as it would end the moment it got interrupted. If it was from a scroll, the user must keep the scroll unfurled the whole time, and there was no issue or need for it to be kept in sight. From the center of the scroll, any sound and video would be perfectly captured within the spherical square radius. As for the duration of the spell, it depended entirely on the user or caster's mana. Be it in the form of a spell or a scroll, memory black box would eat up mana while it was in use. This meant that the more mana player had, the longer the user could record with it. Chapter 523, Who is in the Wrong? On the end of the street, after watching Zizayoshin and Broken Water Arrow's figures disappear into the distance, Coco, who was in stealth this whole time, finally sighed in relief and revealed herself. Soon after, Royal God Call poked his head out from the roof, while War Without Wounds was standing at the corner of the street and had not left completely. On the next street over, Sword Demon took a U-turn to come back. How was it? Royal God Call asked. Seems rather successful, Coco replied. I'm not asking about that, I'm asking about those arrows I've shot. Pretty cool, huh? Royal God Call said. Coco was speechless. Bullshit. Is it as cool as my cyclone? Even Sword Demon was forced to climb up the houses thanks to my efforts. Haha. For real though, Sword Demon, would you have been able to escape had that been a real battle and had I not shown mercy? War Without Wounds patted Sword Demon on his shoulder as he asked this. It would be difficult, Sword Demon answered truthfully. Ha 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 ha. War Without Wounds laughed gleefully. But there's no way I would tell you the position I took while stealthed. Sword Demon had saved the truth for last. Ha 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 ha. It was now Royal God Call's turn to laugh maniacally. Coco was in no mood to laugh at these two men's antics. They might have finished their performance, but the entire operation was still ongoing. The more critical component hinged on Zizayoshin's solo act. Unable to watch and only able to wait for news to arrive, anyone could imagine just how they were feeling right now. Back in the tavern, with the memory black box scroll in use, Zizayoshin could tell from the rate of her mana consumption with the scroll up that she had about 4 minutes and 24 seconds to maintain the spell and record what she needed. This should be more than enough if everything goes according to plan. As she thought about this, she caught a glimpse of Broken Water Arrow's gaze from the words she had just said. She felt very gratified at this, for she was at least still able to learn a bit of information from the man's eyes. After all, she still needed to observe the other party's reaction before she could proceed to the next step. In their field of expertise, this was known as cold reading. While the name sounded mystical, the truth was that it was a mix of observation and inference. For example, upon seeing someone wearing a wedding ring, it could be inferred that this person was married. Wearing a watch on the right hand meant it was very likely that the person was left-handed, etc. Being able to make inferences and draw information from such details was naturally the highest degree of this skill, and like any other skill, this required experience and practice before anyone could become consummate with cold reading. Plenty of swindlers that had spent decades submerging themselves in their world would be able to boast of this. A 20-something young swindler like Zizayoshin often had no lack of innovation or skill, except for the chance to hone her cold reading. Nevertheless, there was such a thing known as talent in this world. Just like how Gu Fei was talented when it came to Kung Fu, Zizayoshin was similarly gifted when it came to cold reading. Unfortunately, Broken Water Arrow's face, which was covered by a thick layer of paint, was a huge hindrance to the skill, making it seem as if the man had no body language to speak of that she could pick up on. He was seated there, with both arms placed firmly on the table. After raising his glass to Zizayoshin the first time around, it never moved again. Maintaining a steady gaze, The man would not even be looking at Ziziotion were he not speaking to her. She knew that he was not trying to avoid eye contact, rather, he was showing courtesy and respect to her as a woman. This was the only thing Ziziotion had managed to grasp from the moment they sat down together, and she began using her skill at cold reading at Broken Water Arrow. She cherished that exchange wholeheartedly, constantly going over that single gaze he swept her with and tried to guess just what it meant. At the same time, she was sitting there waiting for her Mar to respond. In the end, there was no answer. Broken Water Arrow quietly looked at her with an encouraging glint in his eyes for her to continue talking. She, once again, felt the prickliness of the situation, unable to glean any information from his expression. She could only hope that he would speak more, which would allow her to extract valuable details from. Unfortunately, the man spoke very little, and this made her feel that she was having quite a difficult time maintaining the conversation. "It is through your outstanding performance in Deep Freeze that caused us to take note of you," Ziziotion quickly probed, not forgetting that there was time constraint. "That's nothing," was the man's even reply. "Actually, we are also very interested in this plan you guys are enacting," Ziziotion said. There was a flash of astonishment in his eyes just now. Ziziotion caught a clear look this time, and the important label she had said to elicit this response was "you guys." That meant that there was a group of them. Was Broken Water Arrow surprised because of that label? Ziziotion really wished she could just remove the paint on Broken Water Arrow's face to get a good look of the naked truth hidden behind it. "Honestly speaking, we're not so greedy to the point of wanting to obtain the both you and the plan you guys have." She continued to speak along that train of thought. This time, she did not believe Broken Water Arrow would remain impassive. Sure enough, he helplessly shook his head. "I have no intention of joining a workshop. As for the plan, I feel that there's been some sort of misunderstanding here." "Oh, is that so?" She did not say much. It had already taken quite a lot of effort from her to get Broken Water Arrow to open up and talk this much. "What I am doing is purely to give them all a hand, and you say you're interested in that. According to what I know, which is not a lot when it comes to workshop, aren't you guys supposed to be chasing for profits in a game like Parallel World? Why would you be interested in the things that I'm doing?" Broken Water Arrow asked. This guy. She had not expected the man to give such an answer. "What he said is the truth. It could also be that there's a flaw in our plan, which made him realize what's happening here." "Did he actually guess my real reason for being here? Does that mean that I've been the one feeding him information from my reaction, and the one getting read here has been me all along?" Ziziotion did not have the time to go through every detail of the entire plan right now, and she was feeling rather regretful that she had used the memory black box scroll too soon. Still, she had no other choice but to press on. Ziziotion had long decided that she would activate the scroll the moment they started discussing about the plan. From what she learned of Deepwater's personality according to Coco, it was apparent that the only way to convince the man was if every single detail of this dialogue was recorded and presented to him. "Is that so? So there's actually a huge difference between our understanding of this matter and what you guys are really after," she said. She could tell that their plan had failed miserably upon hearing Broken Water Arrow's reply, but considering how much effort was expended to get to this stage and that the memory black box was already in use, Ziziotion decided to make one final gambit. "Oh, what do you guys think?" The man's reply was precisely what she had expected him to say. "That you guys infiltrated Deep Freeze to win over its members' hearts by teaching them of the utilization of jungle warfare, trap formation, techniques, and such. Once that is done, you'll find an opportunity to oust the original guild leader and take control of the guild." Ziziotion laid out their presumption to him. Expectantly, Broken Water Arrow did not have too much of a reaction, merely shaking his head slightly. It was difficult to get much out of someone as composed as he was, even if Ziziotion had managed to hit the nail on the head. The man was still shaking his head when he calmly said, "That's a huge misunderstanding, that's not my intention in the least. But you fulfilled the conditions for this. Since you don't have any intentions of joining a workshop, perhaps you should consider taking up a short-term work for us. Just do according to what I tell you, and after that we can, enough." He interrupted her. She knew that this had been a total failure and that last resort had been to induce the idea to him. Naturally, She had hoped she did not need to present to Deep Waters an entrapment attempt like this as evidence by luring Broken Water Arrow into a partnership with her. In that scenario, the memory black box this time around would have to be tossed out as she adopted the identity of a co-conspirator in preparation for obtaining convincing evidence afterward. In other words, if this current move of hers succeeded, an originally innocent man would be turned guilty by her. There was no doubt that such a ploy was extremely despicable, but at least she would be able to obtain proof. Whether Coco and the others would use it at that point would be up to them. Unfortunately, even this final hand of hers failed as well. Before she could even offer a realistic and tempting price for this work, he already interrupted her, and she could sense a deep sense of loathing in the man's eyes. He stood up and glared at her. "No matter what your intentions are, I am truly grateful for your aid, but we are from different walks of life. You know my name, so no matter what, as long as you are doing something above board, I could still return you the favor. Anything else, I hope we don't have any further contact with each other. I'm sorry, but I'm taking my leave now." He did not forget his manners as he turned to leave. She was in a bit of a daze as she sat where she was. In the end, the only thing she managed to dig out was the look the man had given her. There was no doubt that there was only one of two possibilities. First was that Broken Water Arrow had seen through their plan and was a far craftier swindler than her. Second was that there was no problem with Broken Water Arrow at all, and Gufei and the rest were the ones who had misunderstood him from the very start. Atop the roof of a certain tavern, that very same moment Ziziotion and Broken Water Arrow left, young Master Han stowed away the spyglass into his dimensional pocket. Brother Assist, who was next to him, was feeling very dejected. Thinking that he had probably missed another exciting show, he did not even bother borrowing the item again and merely proceeded to ask, "How was it?" "Idiot actors wasted a rather exciting script," young Master Han remarked. "They failed?" Brother Assist was surprised. The two had a pretty good understanding of the plan Gufei and the others had set in motion. Since there were no important trolls for them to plan this show, they settled with watching the happening from afar via the spyglass so as not to draw people's suspicion. It was just too bad for Brother Assist for being unable to even catch a glimpse of the silent confrontation between Gufei and Broken Water Arrow from start to finish. "If I were Broken Water Arrow, they would surely fail," young Master Han said. "What do you mean?" "We don't know if this is a bust yet," young Master Han replied. "What exactly happened?" Royal God Call managed to interrupt Miles' spell with a single arrow. Moments later, he showed off by unleashing that powerful snipe of his. "Let me ask you a question. If you possess a skill that has high damage and you can hit the target with a sneak attack, will you not try to directly insta-kill your opponent?" Young Master Han asked. This. Even if Broken Water Arrow did not realize it in that moment, if he were to think about this particular factor later, do you think he would be foolish enough not to grasp this? Young Master Han asked. "Doesn't that mean that their failure was all but guaranteed?" Brother Assist mused. "I sure hope he'd only recollect the event at a later period." Young Master Han sighed. Chapter 524, This Again. Linian City, Coco's empty cottage. Besides leaning against the wall or sitting on the ground, there were no other positions for people to take up. Sword Demon, Coco, Royal God Call, and War Without Wounds each stood in a corner together and gnawed at their fingers with downcast faces. They had just received Ziziotion's message about how the operation had failed. The four were now gathered here to watch the 4-minute footage Ziziocian would be bringing back. Someone knocked on the door. Coco darted over to open it. Ziziocian was standing there with the scroll in hand. "Sorry," she apologized with a slight hint of disappointment. "Come in first." Coco pulled her into the cottage. "It's fine. There's no guaranteed success when it comes to such stuff." Ziziocian's mood did not improve despite being consoled. She extended her hand out. "Here's the scroll. Shall we watch it once together?" "Yes, let's." Royal God Call and War Without Wounds immediately came over. Toward these two heartless cads, everyone in the room had reasons to believe that the sadness they had been showing was all just for show. Honestly, the emotions these two had regarding this matter could not match what Sword Demon and Coco was feeling at all. They could essentially be seen as strangers on this matter. "Do we wait for Miles?" Sword Demon raised the question. This place is quite a distance from the bounty assignment hall, so it's going to take some time, Coco answered. Gufei had of course faked his death in that fight just then. Even if Gufei was willing to sacrifice a level to make their ploy succeed, given Sword Demon's bro code, there was no way he would let Gufei do such a thing. Thus, while they were studying the lay of the land on that street, they devised a method to fake his death by hiding behind that pile of sacks. It was rather simple: create a flash of white light after pretending to be struck by an attack and then disappear. These conditions could all be achieved through skills. Hence, as long as Gufei was able to grasp the instance when he would be attacked to use some sort of teleportation skill and disappear from that place, with Broken Water Arrow's line of sight being blocked, there was no way for the truth to be exposed. Originally, they thought of getting Gufei a teleportation scroll, but he simplified this by making use of Windchaser's emblem to achieve such an effect. It would be far more economical of him to simply refrain from teleporting back immediately after completing a bounty mission and saved it for that critical moment. Furthermore, the arrow that ended Gufei's life had to be sudden and surprising. He felt that dying to a basic attack from an archer would have been too unrealistic, while homing projectile looked like a joke in his eyes despite having the supposed 100% guarantee to hit its target. Why would such a slow-moving arrow be able to hit and subsequently finish him off? Perhaps if 100 of these arrows were shot all at once. In the end, it was Zizayoshin who offered to use a unique skill she had: targeted double shot. The skill name had an additional targeted as compared to the usual double shot, and it was precisely because of this targeted that set it apart. The two arrows from this skill were split into two stages. The first shot would be released just like a basic attack in terms of damage and speed. If the shot failed to connect to the target, the second shot would not exist. But if it did hit, then this second shot would automatically seek the target that the first shot had struck, and this arrow would even possess the power and speed above that of snipe. It could be considered as the evolved version of homing projectile. Before the operation began, Zizayoshin already shot Gufei with the first arrow. Thus, as long as she did not carry out any other attack after, the state of the targeted double shot would be preserved, and it would naturally seek out for Gufei at high speed once the battle started and she unleashed the second stage of the skill. Gufei ultimately found this level of surprise attack to be acceptable for him to die under. At the moment, Gufei hurried to meet up with the others after leaving the bounty assignment hall when he received the message from Zizayoshin informing him of the failed operation. The message did not elaborate on the specifics, so all he could do was continue to pick up his pace. "Where's that guy? Does he want to come over and watch this or not?" Coco asked Sword Demon as they waited for Gufei to arrive. "I'll ask him." Sword Demon knew Coco was referring to young Master Han. Young Master Han and Deepwater's relationship fluctuated between good and bad from time to time, more often stagnating at being terrible most of the time. Deepwater's would be gnashing his teeth 8 times out of 10 whenever his name was mentioned, so it was only natural for Coco to have been influenced by this given her relationship with Deepwater's. Besides, it was normal not to like someone with young Master Han's unlikable personality. Still, Coco was well aware of the man's capabilities, which was why she hated him like so many others but would still trust his judgment. Those like Brother Assist, Royal God Call, and War Without Wounds dealt with him in such a manner as well, but this man seemed to relish how they locked horns like this, which really served to rile the rest up even more. Soon, they heard a series of knocks on the door, and the newcomers were of course young Master Han and Brother Assist. The two, who had been watching the fight through the spyglass, were already much closer to this place than Gufei to begin with. Thus, when Coco opened the door and saw the face that irked plenty of women, holding a gaze that regarded the world with much disdain, and the smell of alcohol that followed the man wherever he went, she hurriedly fanned herself. "This smell. Smell? You mean this wondrous scent?" Young Master Han stepped into the cottage, his eyes quickly landing on Royal God Call. "What?" Royal God Call's voice was quite bright, but his lack of confidence was apparent. Reality proved that young Master Han had never plainly shown disdain or ridiculed someone for no rhyme or reason. There were usually good reasons why someone would be mocked openly by the man, or at least he would always have justifiable reasons to show such open contempt toward someone. "Fool!" His naked contempt began showing. "He means you." Royal God Call solemnly looked over to War Without Wounds. The latter reached out to grab his head, but the former nimbly avoided it. He was an expert, after all, so he could not possibly let War Without Wounds pick him up and toss around so easily. How else would he last at that rate? "You're both fools," young Master Han remarked. "You're the fool." Both men immediately allied up against a common foe. Young Master Han did not say another word, but merely gave a mirthless laugh. Seeing the look of desperation on the two men, anyone who witnessed this scene could quickly tell who were the real fools. Brother Assist naturally came out to smooth things over with everyone involved. The others were also a little displeased with how young Master Han had entered and yelled out "fool," but upon hearing Brother Assist's recount of young Master Han's analysis about the situation, all of them quickly turned their scornful gazes onto Royal God Call. "Don't blame him." War Without Wounds suddenly became a kind uncle and rose to his defense. "His brain isn't fully developed yet." Scram! Royal God Call pushed War Without Wounds away as he feebly attempted to explain himself. "What else could I have done?" "I needed to interrupt Miles' incantation. We couldn't have broken water arrow die on us, and Big Sister Zeotian's skill couldn't be unleashed at such a time, or Miles would really die." "That's the plan from the start." Young Master Han face-palmed. "His brain is really underdeveloped, huh?" Before Royal God Call could even rage, young Master Han immediately said, "Didn't you understand Brother Assist's words? The issue isn't in the first shot you took to interrupt the casting but that snipe you fired after. You shouldn't have fired that skill just for the thrill of it, for that shot contradicted that first shot you fired. Well, I thought Miles would surely be able to dodge it, so I figured I could put up a more vigorous assault for a bit and make it appear more realistic." Royal God Call felt a little wronged, for that had truly been the thought running through his head at that moment. He merely wanted to make a better show of things. He had not expected that doing so would create a flaw in their operation. "It's fine. While we did mess up there, there's no guarantee that Broken Water Arrow realized it, right?" Sword Demon cocked a brow at Royal God Call. Royal God Call did not answer but merely looked at Zeotian. She, as the only one who had made contact with Broken Water Arrow after, was probably the only one who knew the answer on whether the man had discovered this or otherwise. Seeing that they were all waiting for her to announce the answer, Zeotian took a deep breath and was about to speak up when a series of knocks on the door could be heard once more. It must be Miles. This time, it was Sword Demon who walked over. However, when the door opened, this person was not Miles but Deep Waters. Instead, Deep Waters was alone, and was stunned when he saw Sword Demon. He was all the more astonished when he glanced around the cottage and realized there were many others within as well. Sword Demon looked sheepish as he turned to look at Coco. "He's looking for me," Coco affirmed. "Who else could it be?" Everyone was sweating and involuntarily muttering "go ahead" to Coco, not knowing what to do with themselves after. Each of them was feeling awkward as they went back to their corner of their accord. Meanwhile, Sword Demon was even more at a loss on what to do after letting Coco pass by him. He was uncertain if he should follow Coco out to speak with Deep Waters or lock the door behind them. Finally, it was Zeotian who had stepped over and said sweetly, "We'll wait for you, Coco," before closing the door. "Why is Deep Waters here?" Everyone inside immediately began to wipe off their sweat. "The rest of you didn't really have to act as if you've been caught with your pants down, right?" Young Master Han's ridicule resumed once more. He did not reveal a facsimile of emotion in front of Deep Waters, nor did he think to act like Zeotian in order to alleviate the awkwardness in the air, because he was not in the least bit embarrassed. However, no one had any response to this rather awful ridicule from young Master Han, for everyone actually agreed that the discomfort they had shown was indeed similar to that of being caught with their hands in the proverbial cookie jar. Could Deep Water's sudden appearance be related to Broken Water Arrow? Brother Assist was forever the vanguard of mediation, always in that unyielding struggle with untimely atmosphere. Had the man really seen through our plan already? Royal God Call had the fleeting thought of smashing his head against the wall when he thought that it was all a result of his blunder. How shameful. It was an operation that Babes had participated in as well. Why else would it be so coincidental? Why would Deep Waters choose this very moment to look for Coco? Brother Assist asked. "I wonder what they are talking about?" Brother Assist muttered as he headed over to the door. He soon discovered that everyone's eyes were staring at him closely in that few steps he took. Thinking that he was about to stick his ear onto the door to eavesdrop on the conversation between a couple, he instantly realized just how repulsive such an act would be. Brother Assist's brain churned as he quick-wittedly added, "Everybody, let's guess." "There's no need to guess, we'll ask Coco when she's back," Sword Demon said. However, if Deep Waters really came because of Broken Water Arrow, that means that we've played right into his hands once more. Sword Demon could not help but think of the last time when Goofy and him thought themselves as clever and stalked the man, only to end up taking a loss in addition to failure. They were utterly exposed in front of Deep Waters and directly caused the fallout between him and Deep Waters, and this time Sword Demon contemplated this as he dashed toward the door. Coco had previously been avoiding Deep Waters all because she was hoping to tide herself through until the storm was over, but who would have guessed that she would be caught in the act instead? As a friend, he needed to help bear some responsibilities for this. Chapter 525, Not Rising to the Bait. Sword Demon's sudden action raised a lot of eyebrows and earned everyone's admiration. This was especially true for Brother Assist, as he was feeling overwhelmed by shame when everyone scrutinized him for attempting to eavesdrop on the couple's conversation. Sword Demon, meanwhile, lived up to his name as the once head honcho of Heaven-Defying Guild, who was never bounded by minutiae from irrelevant principles whenever he did things. The way he pulled open the door directly looks truly stalwart and resolute. Brother Assist thought to himself. Open the door directly? Brother Assist, who had insulted himself with the thought, began to exchange glances with the others in the cottage. Each of them could not fathom just what Sword Demon's inner conscience was like. Naturally, their thoughts were having an even hard time keeping up with what he was doing now. Sword Demon instantly looked to his left and right upon stepping out and spotted Deep Waters and Coco standing at one side just under the eaves of the cottage. The faces of the two were black with anger, and it was apparent that their conversation had become unpleasant. This was of course to be expected. Just as Sword Demon was pondering on how he should butt in, Deep Waters saw him and simply turned his head to the side without revealing any emotion. HMPH. I'll continue to find proof and show you the truth. Coco yelled this and turned to leave. She saw Sword Demon and shouted at the man. What are you out here for? Go in and continue our meeting. Sword Demon was not good with words to begin with, much less when it came to messy and extremely delicate situations like this. He wanted to say something but was at a loss for words. By the time he thought of something, Coco had already re-entered the cottage and Deep Waters had departed. Sword Demon shook his head and sighed before he stepped into the cottage. Where's Miles? Why isn't he here yet? Coco asked when she got inside. Nobody made a sound. The members of Young Master's Elite were all madly calling out on the mercenary channel. Why aren't you here yet? Hurry! Anyone could tell at a glance that Coco was agitated upon her return. Just what did Deep Waters say to her? Everyone was curious, but nobody dared to ask. They all turned to look at Sword Demon. Everyone recalled how he had said we'll ask Coco when she's back, so they were of course waiting for him to ask the question. Ahem! Sword Demon coughed under everyone's expectant gazes. I wonder why Miles isn't here yet. Fuck. Everyone cussed to themselves. So, there are times when he's dishonest, too. A knock came. As Sword Demon was standing nearest to the door, he quickly pulled it open. This time, it was finally Goofy, looking positively spirited. Greeting everyone upon stepping in, he said, there are so many here. Why were you so slow? Coco chided. No one else dared speak up. They recalled Coco explaining Goofy's tardiness earlier, how the bounty assignment hall he had teleported into was quite far from their present location. How long had it been since then? Was this the rumored fickleness found in women? Hey, I met your hubby on the road, and we exchanged a few words, Goofy answered. What did you talk about? Everybody was dumbfounded. What else? Slaying him, of course. Goofy replied with vicious zest. And then? Their mouths were all agape. Then, he lowered his head and ran off. Goofy replied. Why did you do that? Who asked you to bully him? Coco bolted over to Goofy with reckless abandon, looking as if she were about to cry. I'm joking. The intensity of her reaction gave Goofy quite the shock, and he hastily explained himself. Coco was stunned. Can't you guys tell that I was joking? Goofy asked the crowd. They shook their heads, with Royal God Call and War Without Wounds flashing their middle fingers to Gufei. Gufei pulled his sword up. The two men proceeded to pick at their noses with that same finger, looking to their left and right respectively. That was in bad taste. Not even considering the time and place when making such a nasty joke, Coco remarked. What happened? Gufei was confused, but he could tell that something was not right. Deep Waters has just come by. Sword Demon informed. Is that so? Why would he be here, too? Gufei was perplexed. Didn't we fail? Of course, he's not here to watch the video, Zizuyoshin said. Which begs the question, why was he here? Zizuyoshin did not point to anyone when she posed that question. Still, only one person could answer that in this room, and it just so happened that, while everyone was very concerned about that matter, none of them felt right to ask about it directly. He came looking for me. Coco seemed to calm down a little. Everyone kept quiet, waiting for her to continue. Let's watch the video. Coco changed the topic. Everyone was beside themselves as they cried inwardly that this was not the issue that they wanted to know about. None of them had a choice in this matter, however, for Coco had already taken the scroll out. Everybody quickly gathered around. The item was not like a DVD player where people could play, pause, rewind, fast forward, slow down the recording. In short, they only had one chance to watch it. Everyone, please pay attention. Zizuyoshin reminded everyone this before Coco unfurled the scroll. Since we can only view this once, everyone should take note of any detail they can find. Of course, War Without Wounds and Royal God Call would always show a positive attitude toward any request made by a beautiful lady. Take note of Broken Water Arrow and not me. Zizuyoshin felt that there was a need to clarify this point to the two. Of course, they answered accordingly. It's starting, Coco announced as she unrolled the scroll. Can you adjust the volume? Royal God Call requested, superimposing Zizuyoshin's words on the video. The man was instantly gagged and sent sprawling to the ground by the others. The rest then held their breaths as they watched the scene of Zizuyoshin and Broken Water Arrow talking without missing a beat. The entire thing continued until the man stood up and left. Zizuyoshin remained in her seat in shock. Finally, the video came to an end and disappeared along with the scroll itself. Zizuyoshin regarded the crowd. She had already mulled over the entire conversation as she was making her way over to this rendezvous point and made no new discovery whatsoever. Having watched it while adopting the perspective of someone uninvolved, her view of the situation remained unchanged. She did not know if the others could catch anything from this. Did anyone discover anything? Speak up while our memory is still fresh. Coco called out. The 5 members of Young Master's elite looked at young Master Han. It had become their habit to do that by now. Would anyone be willing to be scorned by the man after saying their piece or wait until the man finished expressing his observation? Instead, young Master Han was not courteous and quickly spoke up. There are quite a few things worth noting. Broken Water Arrow expressed his disinterest in workshops, which implies he is not a member of another himself. But he did not deny the existence of a plan. Did he not deny that? I seem to recall him saying that there's a misunderstanding regarding that plan. Royal God Call climbed up to his feet and quickly demonstrated that there was worth to his existence here. And which word or phrase did he say to deny its existence? Point it out to me. He was abruptly met with young Master Han's callous contempt. Zizuyoshin, meanwhile, nodded. The words he had used doesn't deny its existence. One could even say that he's admitting the existence of a plan to a certain degree. Young Master Han nodded as well. It's strange that he repudiated the notion of being a member of a workshop yet confirmed the existence of a plan. Must it be a workshop that comes up with a plan? One person could also come up with a plan on his own. War Without Wounds said. Didn't you hear her mention the reaction she got when she used the label you guys? Broken Water Arrow didn't make any evasive response to that. Too, young Master Han rebutted. That's as good as an admission in itself, Zizuyoshin added. So, it's a group but not a workshop. Could he be a spy sent by another guild? Brother Assist asked. Young Master Han and Zizuyoshin did not answer his speculation. His statement about it being a misunderstanding was what backed you into the corner and made it difficult to proceed, right? Young Master Han asked. Almost unable to continue, Zizuyoshin corrected. You followed it up by telling him of your assumption of the plan he is currently executing. Naturally, You didn't do that in hopes of him accidentally spilling the beans and laying out his actual plan in his panic, right? Young Master Han asked for confirmation. Naturally, I merely did that to let him know his value, or in other words, I emphasized it to him. The moment someone realizes their worth, their next move is usually to find a way to benefit or profit from it. Ziziotion affirmed his deduction. So, you first called his attention to his value, and then you attempted to put a price to it, young Master Han summarized. That's about right. Ziziotion agreed. What if he agreed then? Young Master Han was slightly interested in that. Do I need to spell it out? I could then get proof of whatever it is you all want, she said. Which means, even if Broken Water Arrow has been innocent all along, you'd use this to get proof of his wayward character the moment he took the bait, young Master Han surmised. That's right, Ziziotion admitted. That's really despicable. Of course, a swindler is inseparable from such terms. He did not rise to the bait in the end, though, young Master Han stated. Yes, that's how it went. I take it that you've arrived at the same conclusion as mine? Asked Ziziotion. Young Master Han nodded in agreement. What sort of conclusion did you two arrive at? Brother Assist asked. That Broken Water Arrow is telling the truth, and you guys. Young Master Han was now pointing to Gufei, Sword Demon, and Coco. Misunderstood the man. Sword Demon did not say a word, and the same went for Coco. It was only Gufei who remained skeptical. Are you certain? Didn't Royal screw up from the beginning? Perhaps Broken Water Arrow realized it then, so intentionally stuck to his act, Brother Assist suggested. I've also thought of such a possibility, but thinking about it carefully, if he were putting on an act then, he would be able to hide his reactions to the word's plan, and you guys he should be able to handle it far more beautifully when I probed him, leaving no trace of doubt as a result. Now, even though I'm saying that you guys were mistaken about Broken Water Arrow's intentions, I'm you also stating that he joined this guild because he's after something. Something or someone is driving him to do this. All in all, he's not just a simple player who decided to join Deep Freeze, Ziziotion said. Does that mean that Broken Water Arrow didn't drop a hint to Deep Waters, which made the latter travel all the way here? Brother Assist asked. This. You can actually ask Deep Waters that yourself. Ziziotion turned to gaze at Coco. Also, the matter with you guys stalking Broken Water Arrow, you could have just asked Deep Waters directly if Broken Water Arrow specifically nudged him over. You didn't seem to have asked him about that, did you? Well, Coco also thought that she had been a little impulsive. She believed that Deep Waters would not hide anything from her, so if she were to press him about it, she could have easily found out if Broken Water Arrow had specifically brought Deep Waters over to the tavern that day. Instead, she opted to avoid Deep Waters immediately and follow the two men to play a cynical guessing game. It's all your fault. Coco fumed at the two. Sword Demon was feeling extremely guilty when Ziziotion came to his defense. Brother Sword Demon doesn't seem like such a meddlesome person. Gufei stared at Ziziotion. I say, could you be working with Broken Water Arrow to toy with us? Chapter 526, Forever a Tragedy. How rude of you to actually accuse me of that, Ziziotion said thusly, even though she did not seem to be particularly angry about Gufei's lack of etiquette. It was as if she had already expected him to say that. Before Gufei could say another word, White Knights had already leapt to her aid. Both War Without Wounds and Royal God Call chimed in as they stood up for the pretty lady without hesitation. Miles, you're being too rude. With how women habitually ran to the aid of fellow women, Coco promptly reacted as well. How can you say something like that? Gufei, who was feeling a little helpless, did not expect young Master Han to stand up for him. Considering that we're not close to you, what Miles suggested isn't outside the realms of possibility. Ziziotion chuckled. Let's just let Coco and Deep Waters have a good chat, and everything will be made clear. Unless you guys truly believe that Broken Water Arrow, Deep Waters, and I are in cahoots. Could Deep Waters have some sort of unspeakable plan? Gufei wondered aloud. Hey, that's enough out of you. I'm not gonna indulge your cynical inferences anymore. Coco glared fitfully at Gufei. Alright. Gufei compromised. Turning to Sword Demon in the next moment, he asked, are you still doing your daily mission? I'm gonna kill you. Coco leapt out after him. Have fun, everyone. I'm off to work. Gufei bolted out of the door. With this operation coming to a close, the only thing left for them to do was as what Zizuyoshin had suggested, let Coco and Deep Waters have a good talk to the matter to rest. Even if young Master Han and the others wanted to be nosy, it was impossible for them to continue on as it was time for them to log off for this day, so they each went their separate ways. Sword Demon was the only one who stayed behind. He expressed his desire to talk things through with Deep Waters after Coco and Deep Waters were done on their end. There was no way Sword Demon's relationship with Deep Waters was comparable to what the couple shared, so he was in quite a very awkward spot. But Sword Demon was brave enough to face this head on, which was what truly set him apart from the others. Gufei was running rather fast. While he seemed to be unaffected on the surface, he was in fact rather unhappy on the inside. He was indeed the person responsible for this matter, only to discover that he was at fault for pursuing something he had no business pursuing. Feeling unsettled and sorry for the whole awkward situation he had caused, he dashed out of the door partly because he was rather ashamed to face everyone. "What are you following me for?" Having made it to a junction by the street, Gufei suddenly came to a stop and turned around. "Who's follow you?" "I'm just passing by," Zizuyoshin quickly refuted. "How heartless of you." Gufei gritted his teeth. "You're not resigned to this ending, huh?" Zizuyoshin quipped. "Did you chase after me all this way just to make fun of me? I already said that I'm just passing by." She held her ground. Gufei was helpless. Taking 2 steps to the side, he extended his hand. "Then, please hurry along and pass by already." "Are you giving up just like that?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "Even though you guys made a mistake with your initial deduction, the fact remains that this broken water arrow person is a little strange." "Don't you want to know what's behind that curtain?" asked Zizuyoshin. "I don't think that is any of my business," Gufei remarked. "How do you intend to end this whole debacle, then?" "This affair seems to be your fault." "Don't you intend to apologize with those involved?" "This doesn't seem to be any of your concern," he commented. "I'm just asking." Zizuyoshin shrugged. "A passerby shouldn't ask so much questions," Gufei stated dryly. "I'm a swindler. If I tell you I'm passing by, that's me lying to you." "Alright. Then, I'll be the one who's passing by." "I refuse to be interviewed like this." Gufei walked off. At this time, Coco managed to quickly make contact with Deep Waters, and the two soon arranged to meet at a designated log-off point. Having been staying awake the whole night, neither could mask the lethargy they were feeling. Deep Waters' tired eyes brought along a sliver of doubt. It was not long since he parted ways with Coco, yet he could tell from her eyes that her attitude had a 180-degree change in the time in between. Looking at her gentle eyes, Deep Waters very quickly realized that something had happened. "I can't casually compromise on this," Deep Waters thought to himself as he coughed and said, "So you know you're at fault?" Coco nodded. "It's my fault." "What's your mistake?" Deep Waters showed the air of severity a family patriarch would adopt. "I should not game overnight as it's harmful to the skin." "Very harmful," Coco replied. "What?" Deep Waters suspected he had hearing problems. "I'm going to correct this immediately. I'm logging off now." Coco's eyes were resolute as she turned around and entered the designated log-off point to go offline. Deep Waters was left petrified. After a moment, he came back to his senses. "How crafty," Deep Waters thought. His eyes shifted as he saw another figure. "Sword Demon." "Just what are you two planning to do?" Deep Waters shouted. "Apologizing." Sword Demon's attitude and tone were truly sincere. He would never do what Coco had just done. Facing 2 different personalities in such a short time span, Deep Waters was left distraught at how he should react and spit out, "It's fine." Sword Demon heaved a sigh of relief. The moment between apologizing to someone and hearing the response to this apology was often the most nerve-wracking. Fortunately, Deep Waters responded fast, so Sword Demon did not experience the tension much. "What? So, you all sleuths finally checked out Old Broken and discovered no issues?" It turned out that Deep Waters had more to say. Sword Demon scratched his head. "It's all a misunderstanding. That's why I said that there's nothing going on there. Look at the mess you've made." Deep Waters was still a little dissatisfied. "Is there anything I can help with?" Sword Demon asked. At the end of the day, Sword Demon was not one to beg for forgiveness, so when he asked Deep Waters if he needed help in anything, It was his way of making up for the trouble he had caused. Of course, there is, Deep Waters replied. What? Sword Demon asked. Didn't you pick up some mission that's against Broken Water Arrow? Abandon that. Deep Waters said. Of course. Sword Demon immediately pulled out his mission log and chose to abandon it. In the end, the system informed him that he needed to find the relevant NPC to complete the process. I can't abandon it outright, Sword Demon said, but I'll take care of it. Is there anything else? Sword Demon did not consider abandoning the mission as counteracting the trouble he had caused, as he already planned to do that even if Deep Waters did not make such a request. Thus, he was hoping for Deep Waters to mention something more problematic. That's more than enough. Deep Waters laughed. If there's a chance, I'll make sure to apologize to Old Broken, Sword Demon expressed. Even though going on and on over this would make people feel a little mawkish, Sword Demon knew he would feel uncomfortable if he did not get this out of the way. There'll be a chance. Deep Waters nodded. He did not say anything like forget about it. Ultimately, he had a good grasp of what Sword Demon was like, and not letting the man give an apology would just leave Sword Demon feeling uneasy. If there's nothing else, have an early rest. Deep Waters patted Sword Demon. Bye. Sword Demon smiled as he stepped into the designated log-off point. Deep Waters continued to stay at the entrance. Dusting off his outfit, puffing out his chest, and standing straight, he hid the smile on his face and made his eyes grow cold. He looked all around as he wondered to himself, the third one should be coming, right? 5 minutes passed while he waited, and Deep Waters was soon pondering to himself, that man doesn't really have any relation to me. And he dropped the levels of quite a number of my fellow guildmates in this one incident. Adding that time he spoiled my big plan regarding the competitive quest. I really can't find any reason to just settle this half-heartedly. How can I give a proper account to my guildmates if I don't have a good go at him? Deep Waters was engrossed in his thoughts when he heard someone say, "Oh, if it isn't Guild Leader Deep Waters? Why are you standing here by the entrance to the designated log-off point? Are you a signpost?" To Deep Waters, no one else's voice in this world was more grating than this speaker. He turned around, and the moment he confirmed that the owner of this voice was indeed young Master Han, he hurriedly spat out, "How unfortunate. I'm already out of luck so early in the morning." With that, he proceeded to ignore young Master Han as he looked to his left and right. He gave off the clear vibe that he was waiting for someone. Young Master Han, who could obviously tell this, chuckled. "I say, you're just standing there like a signpost. Are you afraid that the man looking to apologize to you won't find you? Why do you care? The problem is that Coco and Sword Demon don't seem to be online anymore." Young Master Han said. "Who told you that I'm waiting for them?" Deep Waters laughed mirthlessly. Young Master Han appeared to be shocked. "Could you perhaps be waiting for Thousand Miles drunk?" Deep Waters did not say a word. "Are you looking to get slain?" Young Master Han asked. Deep Waters continued to ignore him. "Miles has plenty of park points on him, so he's gonna get rid of them first. Have fun waiting." Young Master Han reminded him kindly as he departed with a wave. His face showed a look of amazement, as if he were appreciating the tragedy. "Damn, how nosy. Do you think I need you to remind me?" Deep Waters looked on with disdain as young Master Han disappeared and continued his wait. Time passed, and it was already late in the morning, but he had yet to see the high door hair of the man. Deep Waters was already so tired he was close to falling asleep as he leaned against the wall. He restlessly wondered to himself, isn't that man really powerful? Why is he taking such a long time clearing off his park value? Could he be unfamiliar with the terrain and got himself lost? Yeah, he seems to be the sort that is terrible with directions. Because he was not very familiar with the members of Young Master's elite, Deep Waters had mixed up who was the geographically challenged member in that troop, and he subconsciously pinned it onto Goofy. Let me send a private message to him. I wonder if he has his friends list unrestricted. Even though it was shameless for the one receiving an apology to contact the one giving the apology, Deep Waters was being considerate when he figured how pitiful it would be if he had really gotten lost. In the end, he got the emotionless response from the system. The account you are searching is currently offline. Fuck. Deep Waters was so pissed he strode right to the designated log-off point and promptly went offline. He was originally thinking that this would be a triumphant moment of his life, Why must tragedy befall him every time? Deep Waters simply could not make sense of it. When he logged on later in the afternoon, Deep Waters immediately complained to Coco about how outrageously unreasonable Goofy was being. Apology? Coco was perplexed. I didn't hear him wanting to come over and say anything. It's only me and Sword Demon who wanted to do that. Did he find you himself? I didn't beg him as that sort of person. Deep Waters threw out a string of expletives. Of course, he was not shameless enough to admit that after he had received Coco and Sword Demon's apologies back to back, he assumed that Goofy would be coming along as well, so he ended up waiting like a fool for hours. Motherfucker. It's that guy. Deep Waters gnashed his teeth. He was originally not planning to wait that long, but after young Master Han told him that Goofy was just clearing off his park points first and bid him a happy time waiting. The innocent and kind-hearted him readily believed the man, causing him to be duped once more. Chapter 527, Don't you agree that it is excessive? It was the next day. The guilt Sword Demon was feeling did not lessen by much after resting offline. He did not say another word about the matter when he got online and just delved into the jungle. He was not off to look for Deep Waters or Coco. Instead, he was off to find the NPC Gru that resided in the oak forest to abandon the daily assassination mission he got from it. As NPCs were always around, Sword Demon found Gru and informed the latter of his reason for coming over. Instantly, he saw the young NPC's forehead wrinkle, looking like that old man in Linian City's library. Abandon the quest. Joining the League of Assassins means to abandon your life and dignity for the sake of eliminating the evil in this world. It is the creed of assassins never to have the word abandon in our vocabulary, Gru said. Sword Demon was stunned to hear this. Gru continued speaking at length about this, making this simple rule sound so transcendental. What he essentially meant was that missions or quests from the League of Assassins could not be abandoned, or at least that was what applied to their daily mission. So, what's going to happen if I can't complete it? Sword Demon asked. Perseverance isn't a bad thing. Keep working hard, young man. Gru replied. Sword Demon saw no way out of this. Would this not mean he could never complete it? He would have to keep trying until he completed it. But the issue was not the difficulty of completing the mission, rather, it was the fact that he would have to disregard his kinship in the process. The man tried to ask Gru if he could put this daily mission on hold and pick up another, but the NPC once more pontificated about the importance of devoting all his attention into one task. Sword Demon was in pain. He had the once-in-a-lifetime chance to join a faction while few people were aware of it, but at the same time, it was a damnable coincidence that the target he got was what resulted in him being unable to complete the mission. Did that mean he could never accept any daily mission from his faction again? Sword Demon was a little listless as he left that log cabin in the oak forest. His guilt from his actions before still lingered, yet he now faced the additional melancholia of his current situation. Truly, it was as how the idiom went, it never rains, but it pours. Sword Demon was all the more helpless toward the rule the system had set. Just as he wanted to contact Broken Water Arrow to apologize and undo the knot in his heart, Sword Demon suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure walking toward him from the corner of his eye. He quickly turned in that direction and entered stealth as swiftly as he could. It was not that Sword Demon was overly cautious, but that the game environment made it such that no one could afford to be careless. In this society where there was no explicit law that punished wrongdoing, it was not uncommon for a player to find himself or herself being ambushed by another. Sword Demon was used to solo grinding, as such, he was used to occasionally meeting malicious people that would ambush unsuspecting players when they were in a tight spot. Of course, the average player usually ended up dying when they made such an attempt on Sword Demon. Still, a team of career opportunists, such as Nightmare of Death's group, would be able to kill Sword Demon without him even catching a glimpse of their faces. Given that he was in Linian City, a place he was foreign to, the very setting and environment were just perfect for ambushes. Having taken a loss before, Sword Demon was naturally all the more vigilant toward such attempts. The direction his eyes were looking at showed clear signs of its branches and bushes being bashed through. Soon after, he saw a player rarely make his way through the thicket and approach him. This man looked in the direction where Sword Demon had disappeared and lifted both his hands. Brother, you don't have to be so wary. I come with no ill intent. Sword Demon did not move. He could not currently tell the level of this newcomer, who was dressed like a priest since using appraisal would interrupt his stealth and end up exposing himself. Seeing that this person appeared to be a stranger, Sword Demon did not plan to stay around for long. Just as he was about to quietly take his leave, he heard another player appear from behind a big tree before him. This man was staring in the direction Sword Demon was stealthed. "Wait, brother Sword Demon. Broken water arrow." Sword Demon could not help calling this out while still in stealth mode. Looking at Broken Water Arrow and this person dressed like a priest standing behind him, it seemed that these two had come here looking for him. "We don't have any ill intentions. We simply have something we wish to discuss with you." The man behind him smiled. Sword Demon recalled the analysis that young Master Han and Zizayoshin had made last night. Even though Broken Water Arrow was not a troublemaker sent by a workshop to infiltrate Deep Freeze like they had originally assumed, but the man did indeed have plans with others. Could it be that this priest behind him was one of those people Broken Water Arrow was working with? Since these people said that they meant him no harm again, Sword Demon was of course not a coward that would refuse to reveal himself. Stealth had simply been a measure of precaution he adopted for this. Hearing these people's declaration again, Sword Demon easily revealed himself. "Who are you guys?" Sword Demon asked. "Just like you, we're players in this game," the priest answered. There was no answer more useless than what he had just said, and it was no better than saying that I'm a human when asked what are you. Sword Demon could not tell what their intentions were, so he had no choice but to continue asking questions. "Why do you wish to speak with me?" "I wish to ask you a question first," the priest said. "Ask away." "As a normal player, what are your thoughts about 1,000 Miles Drunk?" the priest asked. "Miles? You know Miles?" Sword Demon was surprised. "You can say that." The priest nodded. "Still, I don't quite understand what you mean by asking me that question," Sword Demon said. "I'm asking you about 1,000 Miles Drunk's image in this game." "What do you think?" the priest asked. "Very good and very strong." Sword Demon summed it up succinctly. "Don't you feel that it's a little excessive?" the priest asked. "You mean his strength?" "Of course, it's excessive." Sword Demon nodded. The priest gazed at Sword Demon strangely. "With such an excessive strength, don't you have any opinion about it?" "You seem to be oddly accepting of it." "What sort of opinion should I have?" "You know why he has such a ridiculous strength, right?" Sword Demon nodded. "Don't you feel that it's a little unfair? You're a fellow player, too, yet he possesses such a high starting point, and such an extreme grinding efficiency. He has the ability to solo a boss, as if he has a cheating program." "Miles is using a cheating program?" Sword Demon had a fright when he heard that. He had actually met quite a few players with motor control far beyond his imagination in MMOs, and everybody suspected that they were using a cheating program, but a game like Parallel World was different, since such programs were of no use here. That was why Sword Demon had never associated Gufei to something like that despite his indomitable skills. This was also why he had a fright when this man made such a claim. Sword Demon regarded the usage of such cheating programs with disdain, but he did not really know how they worked. "Oh, no, that's just an example," the priest said. Sword Demon sighed in relief. "It's by his skill and ability." "Then, why would that be a problem? You really don't think that's an issue?" "You're a strange one." "Just what sort of relationship do you have with Miles?" "Just say it straight if you have problems with it," Sword Demon said. "Don't you think that his existence can potentially, and severely, disrupt the game balance?" the priest continued to ask. "Game balance?" Sword Demon chuckled. "Is there any game out there that can create a perfect balance in the various job classes? Even in Parallel World, don't the different job classes adopt a rock-paper-scissors approach, too?" "Something like balance can't possibly exist." "You must have heard this cliché saying popularized among the gamers, there's no strongest job class, there's only the strongest player. The way I see it, Miles is the only person fit for that moniker as the strongest player, for no matter what job class he uses, he's bound to make that job class the strongest. What you're talking about is the balance designed by the game, yet don't you think he's far too broken when it comes to the balance between the players?" "Why would there be balance between players?" Sword Demon was left completely nonplussed by this statement. "What I'm trying to say is that 1,000 Miles Drunk's strength already surpasses what the average gamer can possess. With such a player in the game, Do you really think that there's balance between the players? The priest asked. You're being inexplicably baffling. When have I said that there should be balance among players? I've never once believed that there is any sort of balance among players, much less anything that breaks this balance or otherwise. Sword Demon said. I'm the one who is left spinning here. The priest showed a helpless expression. Man, why can't you make sense of this? How can you not understand what I mean? I understand what you mean. Sword Demon laughed. You think Miles is a game-breaking existence, but I don't think he's one because there's no such thing as balance in the game in the first place. It is that simple. Since that's the case, it's meaningless for us to continue discussing this, the priest said. I really don't know why you're talking about all these. Sword Demon replied in kind. Because of how powerful Miles is, do you realize how much harm and damage he has brought to this game? The priest asked. Is that so? How? Let's just talk about what happened recently. Linian City's Deep Freeze Guild picked up a competitive quest that pitted them against traversing 4 seas during their guild quest. If it were not for 1,000 Miles Drunk's existence, do you really think they would succeed? You can't deny this, can you? The priest asked. Sword Demon recalled what had happened and nodded. Even if it was said that Gufei had not stood out during the large-scale chaotic battle in the jungle in Linian City, Oathless Sword's guild quest surely have ended in a tragedy were it not for Gufei's involvement during Deep Freeze's ambush at the final moment in Lori City, made possible thanks to Coco acting as a spy for her guild. See? Priest said. See what? Because of him, this sort of heaven-defying thing, which shouldn't have been possible, actually happened, the priest said. But how do you know that it's impossible? Sword Demon countered. Then, tell me, aside from 1,000 Miles Drunk stepping in, what other methods can be used to turn the tables? The priest asked. I can't answer that for you, but I do know that if our group didn't have Miles, we would also come up with another solution that wouldn't require his involvement. I can't say for certain if that would work, but by removing the key factor that allowed us to achieve victory in the first place and proceeding to argue on the basis that we would fail no matter what or how things panned out, isn't there a problem with your way of thinking? Sword Demon asked. Key factor? Can you merely call that a key factor? Don't you mean indispensable factor? The priest retorted. Fine. Let's just say you're right. Just what are you trying to get at? Sword Demon asked. There's nothing more to be said. As someone who directly benefits from 1,000 Miles Drunk's existence, ask yourself, have you lost your principle? The priest questioned. I haven't. Sword Demon did not even hesitate to give this answer. Instead, I'm the one uncertain as to what principle you seem to hold. My principle? To properly correct all the injustices that 1,000 Miles Drunk have afflicted and get things back on the right track, the priest answered. Chapter 528, The Biggest Weakness of Shadow Mist Assault. You call the things Miles affect as injustices? Whose action can be called justifiable, then? When it comes to what is fair or unfair, whose view should we consider? Yours? Sword Demon scoffed. Justice and fairness come from the heart. Whether Miles can be considered as game-breaking or otherwise isn't something any person can decide, but I believe that a majority of the players will recognize just how ridiculous his ability is and will view him as a game-breaker, the priest confidently answered. Sword Demon burst into laughter at that. That's just a roundabout way of saying that most people can't stand others being stronger than them. To put it bluntly, those are people crying sour grapes. It seems that we won't see eye to eye on this. I'm really disappointed in you, the priest said. I'm disappointed in you as well. You're here to convince me into joining you guys, right? Unfortunately, you're not eloquent enough to draw me to your side. How rare it is that even someone who isn't good with words like me doesn't falter in this debate, Sword Demon said. Since you know what we're here for, let me ask you one last time. Are you willing to admit 1,000 Miles Drunk's existence is extremely disruptive to the game balance and join us in suppressing the damage he causes? The priest asked. HMPH. Sword Demon laughed mirthlessly. I completely approve of Miles' existence and will stand by his side as one of his most staunch supporters. HMPH. The priest laughed coldly as well. The reason you insist on taking his side, isn't it because you've greatly benefited from him? Your 2 daggers, your Shadow Mist Assault, the faction you joined. Which one of these isn't from 1,000 Miles Drunk's involvement? Honestly, I can help you gain far more practical benefits and in greater numbers. Take for example the nuisance of not being able to abandon your daily mission. I actually know a way to abandon it. Would you like to hear it? Sword Demon looked at the smug smile of the priest and shook his head. Seriously, I should not be swearing at my age, but I really can't stand it any longer. You fucking idiot. Put away your god complex that casually assumes you know what people are thinking. This will be the last time I'm telling you this. I completely disagree that Miles is an unreasonable existence. In fact, I will go even further and tell you this. My goal is to become that sort of indomitable existence. As for you, I only have 2 words: inexplicably baffling. Sword Demon was about to leave after saying this, but he heard the priest behind him sigh in regret. If that's the case. Standing before Sword Demon was Broken Water Arrow with his arm supporting the 6-shot repeating crossbow. The man was aiming it at him. You've gotten plenty of advantages from Thousand Miles Drunk's insanely powerful performance in this game. In order to protect the balance of this game, we have no choice but to take them back, as is appropriate. Don't worry, we won't go overboard. We're simply taking the Shadow Mist Assault skill, your dual-wielding mastery, and your faction membership, the priest said. These things, are they stuff you can take back just by claiming that you will? Sword Demon asked. It's very simple. As long as you drop below level 40, all those things will disappear. The priest said. I see. Sword Demon understood what he meant. The 2 assassin skills he had gotten were not accessible if he was reduced back to being just a thief, and the faction membership seemed to be something only players that had completed their job class advancement could obtain. Losing the necessary levels would nationally mean losing those things automatically. He did not think that this man would actually come up with such an idea. I seriously can't make sense of it. Sword Demon suddenly spoke up. Why are you together with such a madman like him? He admired Broken Water Arrow's style and how he acted. After eliminating his suspicion of the man, he found the latter to be rather upstanding. Never would he have imagined that someone like Broken Water Arrow would partner up with such a baffling person like that priest, and by the looks of things, he even took orders from him. Just like you, I insist on standing with my friend. Broken Water Arrow did not say much. So that's how it is. I get it. Sword Demon nodded. I must thank you, then. Thank me? Broken Water Arrow was confused. At this rate, it appears that my daily mission has a chance being completed. Sword Demon proceeded to make his move by using the strongest skill in his arsenal, Shadow Mist Assault. With both his arms crossed, the man came hurtling toward Broken Water Arrow. The distance between them was such that Broken Water Arrow would have difficulty getting away. However, the man did not move away in a hurry, but opted to squat down as best as he could in the time he had. Instead, the priest behind the 2 revealed a slight smile. The biggest weakness to Shadow Mist Assault was not the user's shadow being visible under the sunlight, nor was it the need for distance to build up the necessary momentum to launch an attack. It was the fact that it was an assassin skill, that meant the user would be using a short dagger as a weapon. They were unable to reach a lower angle in the process of their sprint over. Of course, Sword Demon immediately realized this problem as well. In the instant that Broken Water Arrow squatted down, Sword Demon thought to dip his shoulder and his hips to lower his center of gravity. Ultimately, he discovered that even stretching to his very limit, Broken Water Arrow would still be outside of his reach from this charge. Sword Demon would consider the rendering of this move he had the most confidence in useless to be an unforeseen mishap in the fight. Broken Water Arrow's position was really too low on the ground, looking like a spider sprawled. Despite this posture, the sharpshooter still managed to lift his arm. A cold flash. Considering how close their distance from each other and how Sword Demon did not have Goofei's quick reaction time, getting hit by this shot was a certainty. But Sword Demon was well aware that Broken Water Arrow's bolts would not be able to deal much damage. During the other day's fight, Goofei was able to withstand a snipe straight from Broken Water Arrow, which Coco and the others had deemed to be him monkeying about. In fact, Sword Demon had taken a shot from Broken Water Arrow before and had also received Goofei's private message. The 2 of them first calculated the maximum damage output Broken Water Arrow could dish out, and proceeded to make a rough estimation just how much damage he could deal with his strongest skill, Snipe. Gufei was not actually acting rashly when he dashed out without dodging or evading. Since the damage Broken Water Arrow could deal was all within his calculation, he knew that he would not die directly from that one shot, which made it the perfect opportunity to close in on Broken Water Arrow. Gufei's deduction was correct. Right now, Sword Demon was boldly attacking despite Broken Water Arrow aiming his crossbow at him, all because he knew that the latter did not have the attack power necessary to insta-kill him. Thus, even if he had to take a hit, the insta-kill that would follow would be from Sword Demon's Shadow Mist Assault. However, even with all his calculations, never would Sword Demon have anticipated that Broken Water Arrow would still be able to evade his attack. Even Gufei had not managed to see this weakness. This was because he had no idea that the system restricted the movement of the user upon using this skill. Given Gufei's flexibility and reach, he was more than capable of propelling himself into an attack with his arm propped on the ground. Thus, he would never have thought that the skill would actually have such a glaring loophole. Sword Demon no longer wished to continue his attack after taking that shot, so he shunted to the side and did a 180-degree switch back in one smooth motion to transfer his high-speed Shadow Mist Assault onto that unsuspecting priest. Instead, Sword Demon knew about the weakness his skill had and that Broken Water Arrow had the capability to evade it thanks to his quick reflex and agility. But that did not mean that others would be able to do the same. This was especially the case for a priest who was not higher than level 36. Sword Demon had used appraisal while they were having that conversation before and discovered that the priest was low level and his equipment was average. Even if he were a kung fu practitioner like Gufei, the lack of levels and equipment contributing to his stats meant that there would be a limit to his speed. This logic was similar to how Gufei would not possess even a shred of lethality without his Moonlit Nightfalls and Midnight Spirit Robe. After all, the support of levels and equipment were still required when playing a game. Can this person dodge my attack? Sword Demon wondered. Not likely, it seems. Sword Demon could tell from the look of shock he was showing. The priest was indeed very shocked, for he had never expected Sword Demon to be capable of completing a 180-degree turn in that crucial moment while Shadow Mist Assault was still active. He was familiar with how the skill worked and knew it was not explicitly stated that the skill would be interrupted upon changing direction. Thus, as long as the skill remained active and the turn was sufficiently fluid, it was not impossible to execute such a turn without causing the skill to cancel. It was just that he had never thought that this level 40 assassin would be capable of executing such a perfect change of direction with this approximately level 60 skill, and it would be so extreme like a 180-degree switch back. With Sword Demon's current stats, just how did he realize such an accomplished technique? The priest did not have time to ponder on this too much, for even though Shadow Mist Assault had a weakness, the speed Sword Demon was provided was the real deal. Furthermore, just like what Sword Demon had imagined, the priest Yixiao totally did not possess any sort of skill. He was a bona fide frail scholar. Insta-kill him. Sword Demon had such a thought in his mind. He knew that, with Broken Water Arrow's presence, nothing good would come out of this. Still, being able to insta-kill this detestable person before he died was a very satisfying trade-off to him. It was just a pity that they could not revive in the same spawn point, otherwise, being able to catch a glimpse of his expression would be pretty interesting, too. Just as Sword Demon was about to deal the killing blow, he saw something flash from behind the priest. What is that? This thought had just crossed Sword Demon's mind when he felt his whole head buzz. Following this, his body felt as if it had been electrocuted and he suddenly unable to move at all. Bludgeon. Sword Demon was astonished. It was not uncommon to find himself ambushed by a bludgeon, but what really caused Sword Demon to be surprised was the fact that someone had caught up to him and struck with this blow to the back of his head while his Shadow Mist Assault was still active. Besides Gufei's blink, Sword Demon truly could not think of anyone else that would be able to attain such a high movement speed. Perhaps, it's that thing that flashed by from behind the priest? Sword Demon wondered to himself. He did not have Gufei's outstanding dynamic vision. Were Gufei in Sword Demon's shoes, he would be able to tell that the high-speed blur moments ago was a thief performing a shadow step from behind him. That was close. Sword Demon heard this man behind him say this. My palms were sweating, that was so quick. It's fine if you're late. It's nothing much if I drop a level. Yixiao chuckled. With that, Sword Demon felt a shudder of stabbing pain flower from his back. and before he could even turn around to catch a glimpse of his assailant, he was already unceremoniously killed off. Broken water arrows close range snipe might not be enough to insta-kill him, but it could still deal substantial damage. Sword Demon would have no chances of surviving this concerted attack from these two people behind him. I need to inform Miles of this fast. Sword Demon, who found himself respawning at the Thieves' Union, did not even spare a second to feel despondent over his drop of level and just quickly pulled up his friends list, only to laugh at himself bitterly in the next moment. Why would Gufei be online at this time? It's best if I inform the others first, Sword Demon thought to himself and quickly sent a message over the mercenary channel. We've got a big problem. How big a problem? Vacuous men like War Without Wounds and Royal God Call were forever quick with their replies but were always flippant with their words. I died. Sword Demon's reply turned the atmosphere somber. What happened? Once the mercenary leader spoke, no one wished to be mocked and hurried to maintain a clean channel. Chapter 529, A Priest Playing with an Ansel. A very strange guy, along with Broken Water Arrow, said something like Miles' existence is destroying the game balance, and it should be rectified accordingly. Sword Demon gave a brief rundown of the situation as he set off toward their place of rendezvous. Totally agree. These words had just left Sword Demon's mouth when Royal God Call and War Without Wounds quickly rescinded their stance. Their reaction proved to Sword Demon that the priest's claim about the majority of players agreeing to his view was true. The world simply had too many people who would cry out sour grapes, and jealousy was but human nature. What, then? Young Master Han ignored the two men's interruption. I argued with the man a little, and when we couldn't see eye to eye, they finally made their move. Sword Demon shared. The issue is, what's the point of looking for you if they are looking to rectify Miles' action? Young Master Han asked. He feels that I've managed to profit from Miles' indomitability, so since I am not on that priest's side, I will have to be rectified as well, Sword Demon answered. Fuck me. Who the hell does he think he is? A god descending down to the mortal realm? Everyone was taken aback. I don't know, said Sword Demon, that mere level 36 priest. Priest? There's no way Miles can ever offend a priest. Young Master Han was stunned. The others know what he meant. Gufei was sure to have garnered the ire of many players due to his enthusiasm toward bounty mission, but the priest was a job class that would rarely ever get any park point to their name, so even if Gufei hunted down tens of thousands of players, it was unlikely for any one of them to be a priest. Even if there was a priest that had died by his hands, it would most likely happen during a chaotic battle because of a quest or a mission. Just what sort of situation and mentality should one be in before such a deep-seated resentment would actually be manifested? I'm really puzzled, too. It's far too nonsensical. Sword Demon said. So, it seems like the rectification he speaks of includes Sword Demon, who has profited from being around Miles. This doesn't seem to be a personal grudge if you consider the flag he's sitting under, Brother Assist said. You can't use common sense to make this conjecture, young Master Han countered. Why not? Brother Assist asked. My initial deduction is that there's a high chance of that person being mentally deranged, young Master Han replied. Are you being serious right now? Brother Assist sweated. Given my intellect, even I think that that is the most logical explanation. Why are you guys even doubting this? Young Master Han asked. Nobody said a word to this. Speaking of which, if he's talking about rectifying game-breaking things, he should come to look for years truly. Why did he end up targeting Miles? Young Master Han wondered aloud. You can mull over that yourself. Don't send that message out on this mercenary channel. It's an affront to our eyes. The rest had enough, so they soon found themselves restricted from sending messages on the mercenary channel after that outcry. As the mercenary leader, young Master Han had full control of the channel's settings. Everyone was in tears at this outrage. Unable to send any messages, these guys could only hurry to the meeting place. Sword Demon had more to inform these people, and since he was also restricted on the chat, he could only send private messages out. Be careful. If they can locate me, they can surely find any one of you. The moment the others received this message, these men all coincidentally turned to look behind them at the same time. As a chill ran down their spines, each of them began to subconsciously quicken their paces considerably. Sword Demon was the first to arrive at the tavern, with Brother Assist, War Without Wounds, and Young Master Han arriving in succession. Royal God Call only arrived half an hour later. He was originally with War Without Wounds, but after no more than 2 days here, he personally believed that he was already familiar with Linian City and began to operate on his own. In the end, even though he was given a location and despite possessing fast movement speed, he still spent 15 more minutes than the others to reach the place. But when the man came, he had the look of someone who had just accomplished a great feat, with his face positively aglow with satisfaction. Did everyone arrive not too long ago, too? Royal God Call really believed that the time he had spent reaching this place was rather fast, and none of these men bothered to say otherwise. Alright, give us the situation in full, Sword Demon. Brother Assist could not wait another moment and had his record book at the ready. The situation is that you are all surrounded, someone suddenly answered from a nearby table. The 5 were all surprised and looked around them. Sure enough, quite a number of players from the tables around them had stood up and were now staring straight at them. The one who had spoken took off the cloth covering his face, and Sword Demon instantly recognized the person. It's you. Sitting right next to Sword Demon and the 5 others' table was actually the priest he had met in the Oak Forest from before. It seems that the champion mercenary group of Yunjuan City isn't very efficiency when it comes to getting things done. Do the 5 of you need so much time to meet up like this? Yi Xiao asked. The 5 were a little confused as to how they had unknowingly gotten themselves trapped in this encirclement. On the mercenary channel, young Master Han messaged, "Anyone here got followed on their way here?" Everyone hurried to answer, but the system replied, "Your messaging privileges on this channel have been restricted." Just as they were feeling irked over this, young Master Han once more messaged, "The restriction has been lifted. I believe Sword Demon here has already given you guys a rundown of what has just happened. We're just here to confirm the opinions you all have toward Miles' game-breaking existence," Yi Xiao said. How did this happen? They were all anxiously discussing this over the mercenary channel. There's no way he'd be aware that we would convene here ahead of us, so the only possibility is that one of us got followed, and the others converged over here, young Master Han said. Arranging an ambush here is easy. It's hard to realize what is happening when you consider how many players are coming in and out of the place. I didn't even realize that the priest has managed to sit so near us with his face covered. It's not really strange to see players covering their faces anymore, Sword Demon said. I've only gotten a quick look of this person once before, so I really wasn't able to recognize him with his face covered like that. He even conscientiously made an effort to change his equipment. The clothes in the game were rather drab, style-wise. It was not too strange to bump into someone dressed similarly along the street. Even if Yi Xiao wore the same priest attire as before, Sword Demon still might not have noticed his presence, much less now that Yi Xiao had a different attire on. So, what do we do now? Can we kill our way out? Brother Assist asked. He did not have much experience when it came to fights, so he was not good at judging their current situation like the others. There's limited space in this tavern, so having more players present may not be an advantage. I'm just worried that there are more of them waiting for us outside, War Without Wounds mentioned. No matter what's outside, we'll worry about that after charging our way out. Royal God Call had just arrived, so he had not even warmed his seat yet. Hey, are you guys listening to what I'm saying? Yi Xiao saw these men exchanging glances with one another but not saying a single word. It was obvious that had all turned a deaf ear to his question to them and were just privately chatting with one another on their mercenary channel. Concentrate on the right door. I don't have to teach you guys how to coordinate, yeah? Wait for my direction, young Master Han said over the channel even as his eyes shifted over to Yi Xiao. Is there anything you wish to talk about? I would like to hear what the opinions you guys have toward balance, Yi Xiao answered. Balance? Is there such a thing in this world? Young Master Han asked the crowd. The others quickly synchronized and answered in one voice. Nope. That's right. Young Master Han gazed back at Yi Xiao. I'm so good looking, yet you're really ugly. Tell me, where's the balance in that? Brother Assist, War Without Wounds, and Royal God Call all wiped off their imaginary sweat as they sneaked a glance at Sword Demon. Would Sword Demon mind what young Master Han had just said? After all, Sword Demon's ugliness was a rather sensitive topic, and while this priest standing before them was not particularly handsome, his looks could not necessarily qualify as ugly. Hearing young Master Han's snide remark, it actually seemed more applicable to Sword Demon. Ultimately, Sword Demon was unbothered by this. Similarly, Yi Xiao ignored this insult and merely chuckled. So, what you're saying is that you consider Thousand Miles Drunk as a completely reasonable existence? Of course, young Master Han affirmed. He even added, I'm the one who's an unreasonable existence here. Ah, stop talking to him. Let's just slay our way out. The others were already going crazy on the mercenary channel. Yi Xiao shook his head. His eyes moved away from young Master Han and regarded the remaining three men. What about the rest of you? I don't know what exactly it is that made you single out Miles as an unreasonable existence. If you say that it is because of his skill in Kung Fu, he's not the only one skilled in that in this game. Take that guy Broken Water Arrow right next to you. Isn't he the same? The one who had answered him this time was Brother Assist. Yi Xiao answered, balance naturally isn't about absolute balance. It's like an ant cell one. Any movement from either side will eventually return to a state of balance, but if one side is to gain a weight far heavier than the standard, the entire ant cell will topple. That's what it means to truly destroy any semblance of balance. So, you consider Miles as a weight far heavier than the standard weight? Brother Assist asked. That's right. Okay, I got it. Brother Assist nodded. What's your opinion, then? Yi Xiao asked. I don't have an opinion, I just want to understand what you mean. You may continue. Brother Assist no longer focused on Yi Xiao as he patiently waited for young Master Han's command. And the two of you? Yi Xiao turned to regard the final two men, War Without Wounds and Royal God Call. My head hurts talking about such abstract things. I'll owe that. War Without Wounds replied. Yeah, we don't care about all that. In short, hanging around Miles means I can get good equipment. Royal God Call raised his leg and placed it on the table, showing off his boots to Yi Xiao. That's not the pair you got from Grinding Bounty Mission, that's the once felt dancer swapped for yours. Sword Demon reminded Royal God Call that he was not wearing the Wind Chaser's boots. It's for the symbolism. Royal God Call lowered his leg down. Plus, there are ladies to flirt with. War Without Wounds added. Royal God Call's mind immediately thought of the whole bevy of smiling ladies in Amethyst Rebirth with their sweet voices and could not help but leak out a very indecent hee hee hee. Hey, if you're only talking about benefits, I can help you guys with that as well. Plus, it will be beyond your wildest imagination and something even Thousand Miles Drunk can't obtain. Yi Xiao said. Sword Demon suddenly tensed up. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds were two such men who did not seem to be the sort that would be unwavering in the face of temptation. Sure enough, War Without Wounds' eyes lit up. That sounds great. What sort of benefits? For example, any equipment that you wish to get a hold of, or any sort of skill you want to have. I can tell you how to go about getting them. Compared to what I know, Brother Assist, you've barely scraped the tip of the iceberg, Yi Xiao confidently announced. Oh, in that case. War Without Wounds looked to have been moved by this offer. But there's one very important issue here, Royal God Call said. We're not exactly familiar with you. That's right. We don't know one another, War Without Wounds said. I still feel that I know Miles better. These guys. Sword Demon was both amused and piqued by their antics. Well, that's how it is, so goodbye, and so loving priest. Young Master Han got up. Chapter 530, A Bunch of Bit Players. There was no doubt that young Master Han getting up and saying goodbye was the signal. The moment he said those words, War Without Wounds butt cleared off the stool he was sitting on moments ago and dashed out, not caring if he was hurtling toward an enemy or otherwise. With how forceful and dauntless this charge was, he immediately made it over to the door and cleared out a path right there. Meanwhile, the powerful display he had shown undoubtedly drew most of the enemy's attention to him. In game lingo, this was equivalent to their aggro momentarily being gathered onto War Without Wounds. Young Master Han lifted his hand and bestowed a heal on the warrior even as he ran close to the man. Sword Demon and Brother Assist flanked his left and right respectively. As for Royal God Call, he was bringing up the rear and fired off an arrow straight at Yi Xiao while the gang made their escape. Even though Yi Xiao was a low-level priest, His reaction was not slow in the least. Coupled with the fact that no one else was more familiar with the game than he was, the man seemed to have already expected to have been shot, for in the time it took Royal Godcall to let loose the bowstring, he had already ducked under a table. Royal Godcall found this to be entirely unexpected. Would a man with such a detestable god complex act so unsightly during an actual skirmish? Trash! Royal Godcall spat out with contempt as he rushed out of the tavern after the other four. This entire sequence, which took no more than 5 seconds, was far more successful than they had imagined. "My charge is just too powerful," War Without Wounds declared. "It's all thanks to me that we managed to make it out of there alive. It was all beautifully coordinated, with not a single error in the least," Brother Assist praised. As a completely mediocre player when it came to combat prowess that found himself working alongside these remarkable individuals and expert combatants, he usually loved to emphasize on their group effort. "There's no ambush outside." Sword Demon let loose a sigh of relief. Having just lost a level, how would he not be feeling his heart take over it? It just so happened that they had more pressing matters at hand, so he had no time to wallow in his pain. Their recent success at escaping that entrapment, of which the purpose was precisely to avoid losing a level, only served to remind him of his earlier loss, making him feel an intermingling of sadness and glee. Naturally, they were still not out of the woods yet just because they made it out of the tavern. They continued to flee for their levels and even specifically picked the complex and winding back alleys and side roads. They could only play a game of hide and seek with their pursuers to take care of their comrades with slower movement speed, ensuring that everybody would be able to safely make their escape. Trash, trash, trash. Ha 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 ha. Royal Godcall kept looking behind him even as he cursed away in his exhilaration, like he had gone insane. They had gotten about 500 meters away from the tavern and even switched to 3 different alleys at this point, yet he remained as unhinged as ever. "What's wrong with you?" The others could no longer stand it. "That trash, a single shot from me scared the man into diving under the table for cover," Royal Godcall boasted. "Is that so?" Young Master Han suddenly came to a halt. "Hurry!" Brother Assist, who was beside the man, tugged at his arm as he frantically looked all around them. Given his rather slow movement speed and his cautious nature, he would not be in the least bit settled until they ran for about 5 kilometers. "There's no rush." Young Master Han waved his hand. "Is there anyone chasing behind us?" "We don't see anyone." The rest shook their heads. All they bothered to do was flee as far as they could the moment they got out of the tavern. Turning into an alley and seeing no one else chasing after them, they all attributed it to their escape being a success. "That's weird," young Master Han said. He flicked his wrist. "Royal, go and take a look." Thus, Royal Godcall turned his head around and looked back to young Master Han. "There's no one." "Fuck." Everyone pointed their middle fingers at him. "Are you guys sending me to my death?" Royal Godcall cried out as tears welled in his eyes. Even though he often claimed himself to be an apex expert, the capabilities of an expert like Gufate taking on many opponents at once was not something he could duplicate. This was why Royal Godcall considered Gufate as an anomaly that was comparable to a Super Saiyan. As a mere mortal, he had no wish to compare himself with such an anomaly. "Isn't our breakout a little too successful?" young Master Han asked. "That's all thanks to my charge. It was pure perfection." War Without Wounds stuck his thumb out. "We had great coordination," Brother Assist praised as well. "And there's no ambush outside," Sword Demon replied evenly. "The boss was paralyzed in fright by my hands," Royal Godcall added. The 4 finally said the words in their hearts, and young Master Han pointed a middle finger to them. "Are you implying that they've intentionally gone easy on us?" Brother Assist asked. "Considering how high and mighty that person acted, I don't think that he's the sort to dive under a table in fright," young Master Han replied vaguely. "What else could he do besides that?" "With that peerless shot of mine," Royal Godcall bragged. "Still, logically speaking, at such a distance, without possessing Gufate's Super Saiyan level of dexterity, anyone could only use the terrain of the tavern to their advantage." While Yi Xiao's action of scrambling under a table was rather unseemly, it was entirely reasonable and effective. "Go and randomly find a guardian with his or her shield up and shoot that." Young Master Han spat. "That lightning quick shot I made," Lightning, my ass, if even a level 36 priest had the time to hide under a table, what sort of lightning is that? Young Master Han shot his argument down. That man probably expected Royal God Call to fire an arrow at him yet choose not to take any precaution toward it, finally opting to evade it so tiresomely. Is that what you're getting at? Brother Assist concluded. Young Master Han nodded. What does that mean? That means that those guys we've thought to be his underlings were no more than acting the part, young Master Han explained. And that means? Royal God Call could not make sense of it. Bro, this round is on me. Take this token sum and give me a hand. Just stand up and stare at that table when I say so later. Young Master Han slung his arm around Royal God Call's shoulders. The others exchanged glances. Young Master Han's demonstration was just an example of how it happened, but everybody understood what he meant. The priest must have casually gotten a bunch of big players to act the part, causing them to mistakenly believe they were surrounded by enemies. In reality, those people were nothing but background characters. They had no other intentions aside from standing up and staring at them. That explains why our escape has been very successful. Sword Demon carefully recalled what had happened. Indeed, not one of those players that had stood up made any attempt to stop them from breaking out. If he carefully made arrangements to stop us intentionally, even if we managed to make our escape, there's no way we would be able to do so unscathed, War Without Wounds said. He was a veteran as well, so he was able to be conscious of this fact. Furthermore, it doesn't seem that there's anyone pursuing us. Brother Assist added. Everybody was only standing and chatting over at this spot for quite a while now, yet he did not catch even a single person behind him. It was truly unlikely that they could so easily shake them off like this. That rascal, he even managed to fool me. Young Master Han laughed mirthlessly. Why would he want to do something like this? The others were confused. Would any of you listen to what he had to say? Were you not preoccupied by that situation earlier? Young Master Han asked. Everyone immediately came to realize the truth. Sure enough, had it not been for the fact that they were surrounded, none of them would have patiently let such a loathsome person ask them those questions one by one. Seeing the foe that had just dropped Sword Demon by a single level, they would have immediately acted to kill the man. Any word they would have would be shelved for later. Dash 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 dash. This same answer was also repeated to Broken Water Arrow by Yixiao back in the tavern. Alright, let's hurry up and leave. Those guys are experienced veterans, after all. They would most likely guess that something was amiss in no time at all, Yixiao said. Sure. Broken Water Arrow nodded. After the members of Young Master's elite left the tavern, these two men also left the premise right after. To think that all those men had the same attitude toward this, I guess 1,000 Miles Drunk really has his ways when it comes to making friends. Yixiao sighed. He's not really a man of poor character. He might be a little too passionate when it comes to picking, but most of his energy is channeled toward doing bounty mission, Broken Water Arrow said. I know. Yixiao nodded. But ludicrous is ludicrous. Since we are unable to eliminate him directly, I can only become his nemesis to restrain him. Confronting those friends of his won't be much easier despite them not being on the same level as him, Broken Water Arrow said. Yes, which is why we need accomplices of our own. How are those men you are in charge of getting in touch with? Yixiao asked. It's not difficult getting in touch with them, but the rumors about them aren't exactly favorable. Broken Water Arrow replied. I know that. We're only borrowing their strength to suppress 1,000 Miles Drunk. As for their issues of character, we have no right to interfere in that, so we're gonna temporarily feign ignorance about it, Yixiao answered. Still, in order to use them, we may end up letting them gain some rather unfair benefits. I feel that allowing such men to get ahead would be nothing compared to letting those guys just now get them, Broken Water Arrow said. Hee, don't worry about that. I know the limits. Yixiao chuckled. Speaking of those men who lent us a helping hand back at the tavern. What's all that about the grotto on Emerald Island in the Chilling Lock? Broken Water Arrow asked. Oh, that? It's exactly what you've heard. It's a boss's lair, except that the Chilling Lock is right in the center of Century Woods. Century Woods should originally be a high-level grinding map, and since the high-level monsters found loitering around that lake travel in tightly knitted packs, It is entirely impossible for players to make it through by force. Players need to do the necessary background scenario quest first before they can set foot on Emerald Island. Once the world storyline has been set into motion, the surrounding monsters will change their distribution and dispersion rate. Only then will players have the chance to reach Emerald Island, Yixiao explained. So, what you're saying is, even though those players learn the coordinates for that place in advance from you, they won't have any means of making it in. Broken Water Arrow asked. That's right. The triggering of background scenario quests should be a gradual process. Unfortunately, Miles began to advance these world storylines at level 30, causing a domino effect, which changed parts of the quest contents in Y City. The difficulty of missions and quests increased as a result, with many of current players having no ability to complete them. That Guild Chain quest from Yundan City is affected by this difficulty spike. If it weren't for the coincidental participation of Thousand Miles Drunk, it's very likely that they would run into an impasse at that stage, Yixiao explained. So, that means, isn't this a flaw in the game design? Broken Water Arrow asked. Yixiao nodded. Yup. We did not expect for a powerful player, with such prowess, to emerge in the game. We also didn't predict that matters would align so serendipitously that a quest he had encountered before would cause such a change in the overarching storyline of the world in this game, much less for him to achieve a 90% completion rate to a chain quest that is well beyond his level. His imbalance is not just in his strength alone but also in that Lady Luck seems to be on his side. I think I more or less get it now. Broken Water Arrow nodded. Previously, I thought that, as long as the player's level and strength increase, he would be naturally restrained as well, but who knew that, even with the increase in the levels of the majority of the players, he would only become more and more indomitable. That is why we must take such drastic measures, Yixiao said. Broken Water Arrow nodded in agreement. We don't have the capability to directly take on their mercenary group, so we can only find an opportunity to divide and strike first. Yixiao said. Yeah, I've already given that item to Cool Apple, Broken Water Arrow answered.